Hello, folks, and welcome back to the Brawl Boxing podcast, brought to you by the Brawl Network in association with DraftKings. I'm Kieran McCourt, and I'm joined by co-hosts Colin McGuigan and Ram McLaughlin. As always, guys, we're sponsored by Manscaped, which produce some of the highest quality male grooming products to people all over the world. So if you want to use our discount code BRAWL, you'll get 20% off and free shipping. That's BRAWL. I just want to give a big shout out this week to Stephen Humphreys, who plays at Rochdale with Ryan. He's just started up his own YouTube channel, which has really taken off. And I seen he give us a shout out during the week. So big humps. I hope it goes well for you, mate. Thanks for the support and keep listening. Cheers.
Well, guys, as we announced over Christmas this year, we will be doing special edition episodes. So we'll have a couple of these every 4 to 6 weeks. So we'll have guests from all different fields, not just boxing, and it'll be a one-off kind of episode. So this week, we're joined live from Beverly Hills by director and creator of HBO series Entourage, Doug Ellin.
Doug, obviously I'm a massive Entourage fan, and these two are as well. It's a huge honor for us to get you onto the podcast. You've also got a credible one yourself called Victory, which we'll leave in the description below, Joe, for everybody to check it out. But no, it's brilliant. Some class behind the scenes stories about what happened on the set of Entourage and maybe future things coming up. So everybody really encourages all to go and listen to that. How'd the podcast come about then, Doug?
So, it's interesting talking to you Irishmen. I'm doing the podcast with two American Irishmen from the show. And I actually want to ask you this because I got a lot of messages because they're very proud of being Irish, Kevin Connolly and Kevin Dillon. And a lot of people from Ireland have gotten messages like they're not Irish, they're American. So I mean, is there a thing that they can't really feel proud of their Irish roots?
Here's the thing, Doug, right? The thing is, we love that there's so many Irish Americans. But it feels like anytime we've been to America, like anyone who's remotely their second cousin's cat's first owner is Irish, they're like, oh my God, I'm Irish. So we never really know where we stand, if they're actually Irish or if they just have, the loosest.
Well, Dillon and Connolly are definitely Irish Americans and proud of it. But Kevin Connolly started a podcast company and he said, let's do a podcast. And I really didn't want to do anything Entourage related, but he was smart enough to kind of branch it off with Victory. And obviously we talk a lot of Entourage stuff, but we talk about other things as well. So that's where it started. And, we're having a good time with it.
Well, we accept them. We're big fans of them, so they're definitely Irish. You can tell them that we said that.
At the end of the day, you had the tricolor in Entourage. You had it at the U2 concert as well, so you're accepted.
There's a lot of Irish stuff in the show and a lot of thoughts about it, as well as I'm Jewish, I'm American, and I'm not Israeli at all, which is not related. But we put a lot of our cultural stuff in, and I think their Irish backgrounds are important to them, and whether they're American or not. So
yeah, how are you enjoying the podcast, Doug? Because for us, it doesn't feel like work. It just feels like we get to speak to great, interesting people, from all different backgrounds, and we just really enjoy speaking to them. So it's just like a hobby for us. How's it like for you?
Yeah, the same thing. I mean, this is when I think about Howard Stern and Joe Rogan making hundreds of millions of dollars, whether they're better at it than we are, I know it's not work. It's the best job I've ever had. It's just, we have a lot of fun. We get in there and it's hanging out with our friends, and then we bring in some new people. But, I'm working on a new TV show, as you know, about football, European Premier League football, but that's work. And I'm grinding every day. And and as you guys know, that requires months, if not years, to get started. And then who knows if anyone will watch it, like it, or whatever. So the great thing about the podcast is you kind of get instantaneous feedback. You can, have a conversation and 5 minutes later get on the mic and get it out to your audience. So it's great. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, see, I was actually listening to the Jeremy Piven one the other week, and just the little stories with Joe Pesci, in the background, and do things like that. You just don't really know, Joe, because you remember the scene, but then you just don't. Obviously, Joe Pesci wasn't in the scene, so you just see him, you hear the stories in the background, and he's seeing obviously Ari Gold sitting there, basically being strip-teased by two male strippers, and it's just mental that his hero was sitting there watching him for the first time.
It was wild. And if you look like on Instagram, I posted like the picture of Joe Pesci, myself, and Jeremy, because he was standing there the whole time on the set, and it was surreal for us too. You know, we get to meet a lot of stars, but still there's those ones that you really do idolize that you start to get starstruck about as well, you know.
Who would you say is the most starstruck you've been?
I mean,
is it hard to say?
I mean, I didn't even get to talk to Bono because he was doing a concert. But the fact that we got Bono on the show to say happy birthday to Johnny Drama, he said it in Spanish. That was one of the craziest experiences of my life. I mean, it all came together, you know, days before the concert. It was actually my birthday that night. So, and I wrote the whole episode around the fact that Bono was going to say happy birthday, Johnny Drama, but we didn't know when it was going to happen. And U2 is, you know, I mean, long before they were mainstream. I mean, I'm talking, you know, when I was 16 years old, I was a U2 fan when October and even earlier than that. So that was pretty surreal to me to have them. And then, I don't know, Larry David was on the show, was one of my idols, and James Cameron and Peter Jackson, Martin Scorsese. There was so many, you know, Tom Brady. It's been just a wild run.
I was going to actually touch on that Tom Brady thing, Doug. Obviously, you can see I'm wearing a Giants jersey. Me and you both are big Giants fans. So whenever you came close to that Eli Manning, whenever he contacted you and he was going to come on, what was that like? That must have been heartbreaking at the time because obviously you're a big Giants.
Horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, it was horrible, you know, and now I'm like immersing myself in European football and fanaticism and stuff like that. But when I was growing up, the New York Giants were like, you know, my thing. And, you know, Eli Manning, they just won the Super Bowl, and he called me on my cell phone and said he wants to do the show.
Was that completely out of the blue?
Completely out of the blue. Nobody told me he was calling. Nobody told me they gave me his number. And I was like, you want to be on the show? You're on the show. And then I sat down and wrote a script. And, you know, I don't care how great Eli is. It takes a lot of effort to go write a script. And then he just did not call me back. And I had Jerry Ferrara, who plays Turtle, call him. I started calling agents. And he am I allowed to curse? He fucked us over. You know? He fucked us over pretty good. And then Mark Wahlberg, another great Irish American. You know,
we accept him as well. We definitely accept him.
So, but Mark came in and said, "What if Tom Brady and I do it?" And I was like, "All right, well, that's even better." So it worked out, and, you know.
Have you ever seen Eli Manning since?
I have not.
I would love to see his reaction to you replacing him with Tom Brady.
Well, the best thing was we were doing this interview with me, Mark, and Tom Brady, and the interviewer said, "So Doug's from New York, Mark's from Boston. Why Tom Brady?" And Mark goes, "Because Eli Manning's a fucking whatever," he said. And Tom Brady's face was just like, "Oh, like, I don't want to be involved in this," but it was pretty cool. I wish I could find that tape. It's somewhere, it exists because it was on camera, but you know, it was like you said, it was disappointing more than anything else. It's like when you meet one of your heroes and they really let you down. And again, if I called Eli Manning and said, "You want to be on my show?" and he said no, there's no hard feelings. But the fact that he called me and then I put in all this work and then he just didn't show up and then kind of ruined the Giants for the next 4 or 5 years after that, to be honest. So,
it probably worked out. It probably worked out for the best. Like I don't follow it at all. Like it's obviously not really a big sport over here, but like I know Tom Brady. I've heard of Eli Manning, but it feels like Tom Brady is the sort of a true superstar. He transcended the sport.
I mean, there's obviously no comparison, but when I didn't know I had Tom Brady or Mark Wahlberg for the scene, I was just sitting there kind of screwed, you know? So
Eli Manning did win a couple of Super Bowls, though. We have to give it to him.
Well, his brother's Peyton Manning, who, you know, Tom Brady's now there's just undeniable he's the best, but Peyton Manning's pretty close. Eli is not.
Okay,
and the Giants did win 2 Super Bowls. And I like that you're wearing the jersey, and I still love the Giants. But their defense was pretty damn good with Michael Strahan and everybody else when they won those Super Bowls. So, but anyway, Entourage, which is sort of happening with the podcast as well. You know, Mike Tyson randomly we got on the other day, like, because he happened to be with Jeremy Piven. It was very cool. And that's kind of how Entourage came together. Like, I don't know about in Ireland or England, but, you know, there was at a certain point, there was a little criticism of the show that oh, everything always works out and blah, 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 blah. So what I say to that is it was like that behind the scenes too. Things just kind of came together. And just like with Eli messing around with us, we topped it with Mark and Tom Brady. So it was all good. But I'm a fucking angry New Yorker, and I will never ever forgive him for that. So
Colin doesn't even support the Giants. He's actually just doing a dress rehearsal for Turtle here, so we can try and get in the next Entourage reboot.
Here, I'm all for that as well. If you want, Doug, you tell me.
I like the Yankee hat too. I like everything New York. So
exactly, I like everything New York too. Right, so Doug, I'm going to bring it right back to the start with you. Just kind of in terms of you and your life. You grew up in New York, as you said. You touched on the fact that you're Jewish. You grew up in a hamlet, didn't you, in New York?
I grew up in Merrick, Long Island.
Yeah. So obviously that area is quite Jewish, but I know there's quite a lot of Irish going there now, isn't there? And there was at the time.
Yeah, I mean, my neighborhood was really Jewish, Italian, Irish, and the way I like to say it for real was like had a Jewish dentist living next to the Italian gangster, and I'm not kidding. I mean, my next door neighbor was a stone cold killer. I grew up with kids. My friend growing up, I saw him at our. I mean, I guess I can mention my name. I mentioned his name. I like him, but you can Google him. But Christian Tarantino was a friend of mine since kindergarten, and I saw him at the 25-year anniversary of high school, and I said, "Chris, you're not going to cause any problems tonight." Joking. He's like, "I'm not like that anymore." And he was arrested for 5 murders like 3 weeks later, and he's doing life in jail in New York right now. So
wow,
I grew up in an interesting town with some tough New York Jews, which I wasn't one of them, and some tough Italians and some tough Irish kids. So it was kind of like a, lower middle class neighborhood. It was a great place to grow up, but we did have a nice little melting pot there,
That
you
must
went
be
to
so different.
JFK high school, didn't you?
JFK, yeah.
Yeah.
Kennedy, class of 86.
See that Hamlet area? Is it more Hasidic Jew now, or is it Orthodox, that kind of area?
You talk my neighborhood?
Yeah.
No, my neighborhood's pretty much the same as it was. I took my son back. We moved out of our house in 1990. I took my son back about 8 years ago, knocked on the door, went in the house. It's the same. The neighborhood feels like nothing's changed.
I'm sure there's some difference between that and Beverly Hills now, Doug. Only suppose you had OJ Simpson around the corner.
It's
another lovely neighbor.
It's a big difference. And when my kids, I still feel like, even though I've been in Los Angeles longer than New York, I'm a New Yorker. And when people say, "Where are you from?" not because I'm trying to put on anything, but I always say New York. And when I'm with my kids and someone asks them where they're from and they say Beverly Hills, I'm like, shut the fuck up, So it's a different world. And, I at some point I might be back in New York, although obviously it's a little crazy over there right now and here as well. But
yeah, there's a lot of people actually seem to be leaving LA at the minute. Why is that? Like, I seen Joe Rogan's left and a few other people are talking about it.
The taxes are insane. The crime rate's going up. The homeless population, unfortunately, is going up. And, I don't think people are feeling like the government is really helping for all those taxes. Things just seem to be getting worse. Again, I'm not going to be political about the COVID stuff. I think it's very dangerous. I've had friends get very sick. I have friends who have died, but I was never a big fan of this forcing people out of business, and California's been extremely strict on it. And I think I don't know what the future is going to be, because I think a lot of people are going to be in some serious financial trouble when it's over. And it's kind of scary. So there's definitely New York as well. People seem to be heading to Florida and Texas a lot. I hope it all gets back together, because as places that I love, I've loved New York my whole life, and California has been very good to me. So it's tough to see right now what's happening. I mean, as I was sitting here writing, my son, that Citizen app, I don't know if you guys have that there. It tells you all the crime shit going on. And it's like, my son sends me all this stuff, and there's like, an armed robbery. They're chasing 3 suspects, about a half a mile from me, which, it feels like that's happening more and more and more. And it's like 11 o'clock on a Wednesday and there's like an armed robbery going on. It's so great.
It sounded like an Ari Gold line there when he's wanted to take a call at lunchtime on a motherfucking Wednesday.
Yeah, I somehow end up talking like that. I don't know.
It is based a lot on yourself, isn't it, Doug?
A lot of it was, especially those couples therapy scenes. Those pretty close to my life, you know. And my son played Ari's son as well, so it's a lot of my life was in there.
Class.
So, Doug, you mentioned there you've been out in LA longer now than you've been in New York. I know you moved out there in the early 90s. I'm an actor myself. I know how tough it is, you know, in the film industry. What was it like when you first moved out? And I read that you met Mike DeLuca quite early on. What was that? What is that experience like?
Yeah, I mean, I was in the mailroom. I don't know if you guys have that kind of stuff out there, which means I was like handing out mail at New Line Cinema, which was a film company, and I was doing stand-up comedy, and I you know, handed out flyers to everyone at the company to raise money for a short film I was doing. And Mike DeLuca, who was VP of New Line at the time, gave me money to do that. But when I first got out here, I didn't know a single person. I had no idea what I was doing. I did not grow up with knowing anyone in the film or entertainment business. It was just something that I loved. And, you know, you need obviously to have some talent, but you need a lot of work ethic and you need a lot of luck. And some things bounced my way, fortunately, you know, including meeting Mark, who not just for Entourage, but the movie I did before that, Mark was in some ways instrumental in making happen as well. So, you know, it's good when you can align yourself with people. And, you know, when I first met Mark, his career was just getting started. So I didn't know what he was going to become either. But it's important that you try to align yourself with people, and work ethic is the key, because a lot of people I came up with who used to be at the clubs every night, I wasn't, you know, I was home and I was working and grinding. And even at 52 now with this fucking gray coming in.
You don't look it, Doug. You don't look it.
And this goes off, you know, I said, we got Mike Tyson on the podcast the other day and we were on video, and he comes on, he's like, he looks at me, he's like, Doug, man, we got old. I'm like, no, it's the beard, Mike. I'm going to look 21, but, you know, it goes fast, and you guys are young and enjoy it now, but it really does. It flies by. So.
Yeah.
Well, what was it like as well? I believe you met. Oh, sorry. I just wanted to ask. I know you met David Schwimmer quite young as well. I think he was in your first short. Was that surreal when he got the role of Ross in Friends and just blew up?
It was so surreal because like three months before, he had the hot show with Henry Winkler. You know who Henry Winkler is?
Yeah.
So that was supposed to be the big show. It was some show called Monty on Fox, and I went to the taping, and it was going to be the biggest thing, and nobody watched it, and it was canceled. And quickly, he got this show called Friends, and I didn't realize what was happening. But at the time, I mean, I remember this like it was yesterday. I was getting married, and David and I had lunch. The show just started airing, and we were having lunch at a hotel in Beverly Hills, and there was a window, and we're sitting in the window, and all of a sudden, like, girls start piling up, and I hadn't even seen the show yet. So they start piling up outside the window, and I'm like, you know, I was fucking arrogant 21-year-old. I'm like, how you doing? What's up? And they were all there for them, and I believe it was the fastest show in history at that time that went to #1. So it aired and like took up like that, and they became like, it was like the Beatles. So yeah, it was extremely surreal. And obviously, you know, when I met David, I knew he was going to be a star. He auditioned for my little short film that I did. And one line in, I said, you got it. And I told everyone, I said, this guy's going to be a huge star. And whether it was going to be Friends or something else, I was pretty sure that was going to happen. So.
How do you think he coped with the fame? Because as you say, there's fame and then there's Friends fame. Like it was like Beatlemania, and that's even over here in Ireland and UK and stuff. How do you think he took that sort of overnight success? Like it must have just been.
I mean,
hard.
David is, you know, I mean, he could probably speak to it more than me, but I never saw any changes in him. I know him since 1990. I've never felt he was any different. I felt he was a very grounded guy, and he kind of, to me, it seemed like, you know, the fame was like it came along with it, but he was a worker. He was like, he loved acting and writing and directing. He had a theater company long before Friends. And I just think he was, I think he just took it as a job, but I don't know. I mean, obviously he'd have to speak to that because I can't even imagine. And still, it's still as big as it ever was. So he's still dealing with it the same way, you know?
Yeah, I think it was pretty surreal because I obviously was a massive Friends fan, and I seen David Schwimmer actually appear in Entourage, and it was just a completely different character to Ross. It was actually himself, and it was
Yeah.
just like mad. Though it's just because it's just giving you a behind the scenes sort of look at Hollywood that we don't see, and it's
Yeah.
just and that's what I loved about Entourage the most was everything. Like you just see them on the movies, you see the acting, you see them on the red carpet, but that's it. You don't see the things, Joe, in the agents, the meeting rooms, the screenings, even the auditions. And it was for me, it was like who's not in obviously in the acting industry. It was
Yeah.
unbelievable for us just to get a look in at that.
Yeah, I mean that was a fun thing to do and try to do it as realistically as possible, and that's what I'm going to try to do with this new show. I'm working with Thierry Henry on this football show where we want to, go behind the scenes. And I know, look, they got Ted Lasso, which is a nice show, but we want to do the really realistic behind the scenes of what these guys through, the pressures that are on them and their family, and so that's what we're working on now.
Yeah, like see with footballers as well, like it's sort of like a religion football, and there's not really been many TV shows over here that like, and I think it's like calling out for it. And with obviously you with your Entourage background and obviously the success that you've had with mixed with Thierry Henry, it's like I'm sure there's going to be a serious buzz in the UK and Ireland because there's a lot of us already that can't wait for it. It's only in writing at the minute, isn't it?
Yeah, we're writing it, but Matthew Vaughn, who did Kingsman and produced Layer Cake and Snatch, he's directing the pilot. So yeah, we're really excited, and we're going at it as to try to be as realistic as possible and take elements of Thierry's actual life, which was similar to what I did with Mark Wahlberg on Entourage. So that's what we're hoping. So we're writing right now on Zoom, which is weird because I got some all in London. All the writers that I'm working with are all in London. Got a couple of Irishmen, real Irishmen, and women as well. So it's been fun though.
Doug, in terms of, obviously with Entourage, at what point did you know it was going to become what it became? Like, was there a point of it that you knew?
I mean, I don't even like to think whatever it became, it became. I was always so negative. I'm just like, we got to just keep making it good. But in the second season, when we shot in Vegas and we walked out to the pool and like a bunch of freaking New York meatheads started screaming at Turtle, I was like, it was surreal because I didn't even know like that it was even working because TiVo had just come out and ratings looked very different than they did 2 years earlier. And articles were saying Sex and the City did this and we did this. I'm like, oh my God, they're going to cancel us. And then I'd, go out with these guys and people were treating them like they were huge celebrities. So it was kind of weirdly overnight, even though it took about 3 years to get to that point,
How much of it was based on Mark Wahlberg's life? And was he like involved in the process much? Or?
Yeah, I mean, Mark was involved. I mean, it started out as inspiration from his life and took elements of it, but more of the stories and the real friendship stuff came from my life. Obviously, his career was a basis for everything happening and some elements. And Mark was great in really supporting that. He believed in me and said, he really said, just don't make me look stupid. And he liked it from minute one. So Mark was the guy that could come in. Mark, can you get Marty Scorsese to do this? And, he would make it happen and promote it and, show up on the set and like motivate people and get people excited about it and call up the studio and when we needed more money. So he was very involved as a producer and stuff. He didn't get too involved in the scripts, but he was very supportive of it and kind of the best producer you could have.
I've never seen a show watched more with athletes in my whole entire life. Like it was like everybody buzzed off it. Do you think that was sort of made it easier for you to get athletes onto the show? Like big
Yeah,
names
for
like
sure. I mean, when we started, it was impossible to get anyone in the first season. It was really hard. And then the athletes really all started calling. I think they really related to that lifestyle. That's how they grew up. And, there's been a bunch of knockoffs since then. Even LeBron did one. But, it's I think that they recognized the reality of it and kind of understood that it spoke to what their experiences was. So, it was great when I would get calls. LeBron James called me, wants to be on the show. Okay, you're on the show. We get Phil Mickelson. We get, I'm trying to think of the other athletes, Russell Wilson and, Lamar Odom, so many, and it was really great.
What was the sort of environment like on set? Was it the same team over the years, or did it sort of switch? I know obviously many of the actors and you stayed the same, but what was
We had
everything
a
else
lot
like?
of the same. We had a lot of the same team, and a lot came back from the movie, and we've brought lots of them onto the podcast. And we were actually talking about it yesterday. The episode that airs Fridays with my cinematographer, and he was like, "This was the best set I've ever been on because it was fun, and it wasn't that it was a party or there was crazy weird shit happening. It was just like family." And there's a lot of relationships that don't often happen on a television show that have lasted now 15, almost 20 years. So that's how I grew up. My best friends are from kindergarten still. I talk to these guys pretty much every day. And that was kind of the environment on set. And for, I think, the vast majority of the people who worked on the show, they felt that. It was just kind of a family, fun environment. We don't take ourselves too seriously. We're not changing the world. We're just trying to like have a little fun and entertain people. So
Yeah, I think you get that actually with watching it as well. It's such a feel-good show to watch. Like when I'm like, if just say, for example, you had a shit game or something, and like you would put on a few Entourage episodes, and it cheers you up. And it's one of them things where you don't even have to do it in order. You can just once you've watched it, you can just go into like a random part of the set, the 8 seasons, and just click on it there and then watch it. And it was just instantly, it was just feel-good factor. And obviously that's why people said, not something never went wrong, things like that. But it's like, well, Vince had a few movies that flopped in it, so some things did go wrong.
Yeah, there's a little bit that goes wrong, but I always used to say, go look at Mark's life. Go see how much has gone wrong in the first 50 years of his life, And people used to say, why all the cameos and stuff? And I'd be like, well, when I get to Mark's house to screen a movie, Kevin Durant is sitting in the chair like he lives there, Like, Thierry's manager, who's now my good friend and producing this show, would call me up and be like, hey, Thierry wants to be on the show. I'm like, okay. And I start telling like the crew who loves football, I'm like, Thierry Henry wants to be on the show. They're like, get him on the show. And I'm like, it's kind of the things that would just happen. So the behind the scenes, which is why I'm enjoying the podcast so much, because the behind the scenes of the show, even though, by the way, I killed myself to write these scripts, but the vibe was really there. And it was there with the actors from minute one. When we cast them, which was a difficult process, they just felt like best friends from the second it happened. It wasn't fake on the set. And even though they were doing lines that I or my team wrote, they were like that off the set also, so it was fun.
I mean, the casting in it was second to none. I think that's one of the reasons that made it so perfect, especially obviously the Jeremy Piven in it. It just suited him down to a T. How much say did you have in the casting process?
I mean, I had all of
the whole
it.
time?
I mean, obviously, it was a team effort, but I wrote the script with Jeremy in mind. I knew I wanted Jeremy. The other 4 guys, I didn't know. They all auditioned. But the good news is there really was no debate. Like with our team of Mark and our producers and HBO, everybody was on the same wavelength. But what I was looking for, which I found, was forgetting Jeremy, who I knew as the agent. It didn't matter whether he was Chicago, this and that, but I needed 4 authentic New Yorkers that felt like the people I grew up with, because that's how I thought I was going to be able to write them, which, is one of the challenges with this new show, Day One's. Like, I'm not that, I've been to London 3 times. I've been to Ireland a couple of times, but I'm not familiar with that area and that world the way I know New York like the back of my hand. So it is one of the challenges as we're casting now. And it's like, okay, are they East London, South London? Are they Irish kids who moved to London when they were young? So we're getting all that. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is going to be like, do they feel like they grew up with each other? Do they feel like they know the ins and outs of each other like best friends do? So that's the challenge,
What was the bonding? Was there any bonding process when they were cast?
Well,
Sorry, leading up to filming?
And they cast them, and Mark, as the great producer, said, I got a private plane. We're going to Vegas tomorrow, so everybody can have a good time. So that's not necessarily normal for a first day of a television show that nobody knows if it was going to work. So having a movie star as the producer, who also happens to be, a kind of guy's guy and a kind of build everybody up kind of guy, So hopefully if Thierry sees this, he's going to make sure we got a private jet for this cast.
How hard was it? Because back then you wouldn't have had Netflix or like Amazon Prime. You only really had the likes of HBO. How hard was it to get picked up?
I mean, it's not that it would be easier today. I had never done a television show, and HBO was the only game in town. And it was like, I remember when we sold the script, it was like we walked out of there like we owned the world. We felt like we made it. It was HBO. The Sopranos was the greatest show that's ever been on television, and all they do is great stuff, you know? So Larry Sanders and Oz and Sex and the City and whatever. So it was like a moment of, oh my God, we made it. Then I handed in the first draft of the script. They fucking hated it. Then I handed in the 400th draft of the script. They had this problem. Then we had to get a director approved. Then we had to cast it. Then we had to do this. So it was a grind, but at the same time, because HBO was the only game in town, they were willing to take the time with us to get it to a point that they were happy and we were happy. And I think it all turned out for the best.
Some of the acting performances on Entourage as well were like obviously it's Kevin Dillon, Jeremy Piven, that like the reactions people got off the drama and the Ari Gold characters were like, I was mind blown watching it myself. I was like, these guys have to be up for Oscars. Like, did that lead to a lot of attention for them elsewhere after Entourage or during it, even when you're sort of filming?
I mean, yeah, obviously Jeremy did a show right after, and Kevin Dillon got like the big show on CBS after. They all did. Kevin Connolly got a show. Jerry Ferrara was on Power. But somehow we really kept it all together, and they were so ingrained in these characters that it kind of worked for them. So that's why I think people are so interested in like redoing it now, because they feel like they are those characters. And I don't know, it's a question for them whether they feel like they kind of got locked into those or not. I can't answer that. But when the show first started, the first year, even though Jeremy was kind of famous and Kevin Dillon had some fame, some people thought it was a documentary. Some people thought like, this guy Vince is a real movie star and like this is unscripted, which when I was young and insecure, it used to bother me. I'm like, I wrote every fucking syllable of this and people think they're making it up. But that was really a compliment to both the writing and the acting. And, as I say about this new show, the scripts can be as good as they could be Oscar-winning scripts. You need that cast that will make it work. And I knew I wanted Jeremy, but Kevin Dillon read one line in his audition, and I was like, how is this guy not a giant comedic star right now? So we got lucky in a lot of respects. So
well, with day ones, Doug, if you need someone that looks like a young David Beckham, you need to just hit me up. The hairline's maybe not there, but if you need something that looks like him, I'm here.
Are you acting? Because I'm definitely.
Well, I'm an actor, Doug. I actually am an actor, so he can teach me. He can teach me the football.
He tells everyone this, Doug. In terms of whenever you shot that scene at Yankee Stadium in Entourage, how surreal was that?
That was freaking. I mean,
you're a Mets fan though, right?
I'm a Yankees fan.
I read something about colors. Yeah,
I'm a Yankees fan, but baseball is not like I don't hate the Mets. I like the Mets also. Yeah. Like football is, I hate the Jets, and hockey, I hate the New York Rangers. I mean, that is like that's almost like European football. Like I hate the New York Rangers. I used to go to Madison Square Garden when I was 10 years old in a New York Islander jersey. They would throw shit at me, these fucking animals. So I do not like the New York Rangers. But Yankee Stadium, Mark Teixeira, who was the first baseman for the Yankees and a Hall of Famer, I think, just an amazing guy. He got us that. He said, "You want to shoot at Yankee Stadium?" I brought my children. I brought all of my high school friends and their children, and we owned Yankee Stadium for 5 hours. It was with A-Rod. It was incredible, and that was one of the most special experiences that I had.
Was Jeter there?
Jeter was not there that day.
No. Oh, that would.
I wish he was, but
yeah, it would have been true.
But Jeter, Derek is good friends with Kevin Connolly, and some of the surreal stuff. I was actually just talking about this today, but some of the surreal stuff that would happen with athletes, like we get this invite randomly from some guy who says, you want to come to the Yankee game? I'm best friends with Derek Jeter, and we're going to go to the party with the Yankees after. So me and Jerry Ferrara play Turtle. Go, yeah, we'll go. So we go to Anaheim Stadium to see the Yankees versus the Angels. And we're sitting in the first row. Jeter gets on the on-deck circle, if you guys know what that is. He's going to bat next. And this guy starts screaming as loud as he can, Derek, I'm with the guys from Entourage, Derek. And we're like, dude, shut the fuck up. What's the matter? And you can tell Jeter can hear it. And the fans are looking around like, what the hell's going on here? Kevin Connolly, who played Eric on Entourage, is in New York. He texts me an hour later. I'm not going to say that Derek Jeter had his phone because I have no idea how this happened. But Connolly texts me from New York and says, yo, get the fuck away from that guy. Derek Jeter can't stand him. Like, you got to get away from him as quickly as you can.
Oh my God.
So we had to pull this whole thing and pretend like we were going home. And then we ended up at this party with the Yankees and Derek Jeter and Roger Clemens and, Jorge Posada at the time and all these other guys. So it was always weird, interesting stuff like that was going on, that I was actually talking to the writers today for Day Ones. I said, maybe there's a way to incorporate these kinds of stories into the world of football. So
with Day Ones, is there any celebrities or athletes lined up in the football scene?
I mean, right now we're just writing, but Thierry will make an appearance, and then Thierry's gonna have to be like Mark and go get us Messi and Ronaldo
and Rand McLaughlin.
Exactly. This is, while I love that world, it's not my world. So I can't wait to get over. I should have been there already, but I can't come. London's on a lockdown. So, but we'll get into it, and hopefully it'll have a similar feel to Entourage, but I think a much bigger scope, because football is so huge, and Entourage at the end of the day, was Hollywood and guys. This is going to incorporate women and the whole gamut of the world of Premier League football. So
I was just about to ask that. Are you aiming for, obviously in America, soccer is, as you call it, is way down the list. Will you be aiming this more at Europe and the rest of the world, or do you think it could take off in America as well?
We're trying to do it similar to how I did Entourage. Sometimes they would say this is too inside, this is too inside. And the way I always put it is, characters are characters. And if you like these characters, you don't really give a shit what they're doing, whether they're firemen, whether they're movie stars or whatever. So I'm taking the same approach as this, but I've brought on 6 writers from Europe, my producers from Europe, the directors from London. So I want it to be as authentic to Europe as possible. And hopefully it translates to America. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But as I feel, family and relationships, if they're done right, will appeal to everybody. And again, really it's going to come down to casting. And just like casting Vince was not easy, casting a young Thierry is not going to be easy. But if we can pull that off, I think the sky's the limit.
Can you say a big fuck you to the people who are easily offended, please, and make sure that it's exactly the way Entourage was, and they're just the man talk, people, the way they talk to each other. Like, people are so easily offended nowadays, and it's like, it must be like so hard to write a script if you actually have to care about what to say, or what they think.
The truth is I've never operated like that. I operate in realism, and if Entourage was done today, realistically, they would speak differently, especially in front of other people, because if you don't, you're going to be ostracized and your career is going to be over. But that's not even like a concern of mine. Yeah. The way you guys know how you talk to each other and we speak to each other, and we have adjusted. My friends, we have adjusted. There are things that I said 20 years ago. There are things that Eddie Murphy said 20 years ago that he's, I'm sure, embarrassed about now. The world changes, and you either adapt or you die. That being said, PC culture has no effect on my life whatsoever. I mean, they've tried to, with a lot of haters coming out. Entourage was this and that. It's funny, like Sopranos, which, as I said, is one of the best shows ever, but a show about a fucking gangster family that murders people is not, that's okay because it's somehow art. But Entourage, because it's guys or something and it's trying to be funny, is like, is the Antichrist. But I don't buy into any of that shit. And these guys will speak, hopefully, as authentically to the world that they live in as humanly possible. So.
Yeah, you started off as a comedian, Doug, didn't you, as well? But is it like, was that your dream job, or was finally going into being a director and that and in the movie business? Was
I
that
don't know. My dream job was to be a professional athlete, and I was not
really?
good enough to do it. I mean, that's when I spent my childhood. I was never getting there, but that's where I worked the hardest at sports, and that's what I cared about the most. I don't know what my dream job is. To be honest, right now, I feel like I'm living my dream job, which is the podcast. While I love the show and I loved Entourage and all the rewards that came with it, it's hard work. And at 53, when I dream, I don't dream of working 12-hour days and waking up in the middle of the night and thinking what Johnny Drama would say or Thierry Henry would say. It's a lot of grinding. And, as you can tell, I like to talk. So doing a podcast is very easy for me. Now, obviously, you want to get paid all the money that I can get paid making a TV show, but that's not come to fruition yet. So hopefully you guys can get me some more listeners. But
100%. Who's your dream guest for the podcast?
Oh man, I mean, there's so many,
Yeah.
I mean, but I want everyone that was on the show.
Yeah.
So, and I love the people that I idolize. Again, the athletes that I idolize. I want Tom Brady. I want Gronkowski. I want everybody. And then I want the filmmakers, Scorsese, Larry David, and everybody. So Tyson, I mean, I would have said Tyson a week ago, and then he just calls in randomly, which was awesome.
What was that,
I wanted
Mike?
to ask about that. Yeah, Mike Tyson is obviously one of the biggest sports stars of all time, in any sport of all time. You're on a first name basis with him. How strange is that?
It's weird, but what happened with Mike was the same thing. We got him on Entourage, and then Mike said to me, why don't you do what you did with Wahlberg with me? And I did. I came up with a show idea. We got John Ridley, who won an Oscar for 12 Years a Slave, to write it. Spike Lee directed it. John Boyega from Star Wars was in it, and HBO made the pilot, and HBO ultimately did not go forward with it. So Mike and I have a history together, and, it's amazing how he's had the transformation, but he really is. He's a sweet, funny, interesting guy, and when I said to him, when he said that we got old, which was depressing to me, I was like, Mike, you didn't get old, because I mean, I don't know what you guys thought of that fight, but I honestly thought he
looked amazing.
I thought he was going to hurt him. I was legitimately worried he was going to kill him, but he looked unbelievable, and he's around my age. So it gave me motivation to get back into my sports dream,
Rumor has it them 3 armed robbers down the street, Doug, were actually going to hit your house, and then seen you were on Zoom to Mike Tyson and thought, we better not.
Yeah. They should think better anyway, though. I've got my guns ready now, as sad as it is. It really does feel like that now. I was always like an anti-gun person in the last 2 years. I've just been like, all right, I'm getting my guns ready. And if you're coming in this house, we're going down swinging. So
to anyone who's listening who was planning on robbing his house, it's just not worth it, lads. Go next door. Who lives next door, Doug?
Yeah, and the German Shepherds are here too. So we got the whole plan covered. So yeah.
You're a big boxing fan, aren't you, Doug, as well?
Yeah. Yep.
Who was your hero growing up in the boxing world? Because we're a boxing podcast. We've got a lot of world champions on so far, but it's always interesting to hear your thoughts on boxing, because it sort of seemed to like go a little bit away, and the UFC seemed to like sort of maybe like go up on par with it or maybe surpass it. But now I feel like the boxing is like coming back into it again, and
it feels like it's coming back. And I was like, I was a Sugar Ray guy, Leonard and Tommy Hearns and Marvin Hagler back in the day. Obviously, even though Ali was a little before my time, I grew up loving Muhammad Ali, and I got the chance to meet him in Las Vegas, which was pretty special. But I grew up a huge boxing fan, and but those Sugar Ray Leonard was like the guy that I really kind of idolized when I was young. I used to I don't know if you remember that fight against, it was Hearns or Hagler, where he did this and fucking then landed.
Yeah.
I used to do that my whole life, I tore my rotator cuff doing it,
but Doug, I wanted to ask you, right? I read that you came close to buying the Mets. Obviously, I'm a big New York sports fan. I know Ram is joking around at the start, saying we wore this to be like Turtle. But in terms of that Mets transit, did that nearly happen?
Now let's just make it very clear so nobody really does think it's worth robbing my house. I was going to put, I'm talking a tiny amount of money to have a tiny little piece, like, so I could get free popcorn and walk around and tell people I own the Mets. So I was never going to buy the Mets, but I do have some very successful friends who were going to buy the Mets, and then the New York Islanders. So the Islanders thing got a little closer. Again, I'm talking like a couple of cars was what I was going to put into that, not a couple of $1 million that I don't have. So, but, I just like the Islanders really would have been my dream to have any part of that. The Mets would have been really cool, but it would have been a little like, I like the Yankees still. So, but both those things came pretty close to happening, but didn't ultimately. The Islanders one was really kind of real.
Do you get the MetLife Stadium to watch the Giants much, with you obviously being in Beverly Hills? Or
No, I go to Dodger Stadium. I go to some Laker games and stuff, but I have not gotten back. I probably go to 2 Yankee games a year back in New York, and then I'll always go when they're in. If they're playing the Dodgers or the Angels, I'll go here.
Yeah,
you were a Rams fan at the start. I can't believe they stole your idea and brought it, instead of LA Gold, it went back to the LA Rams.
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty wild. I mean, Casey Wasserman is really one of the guys that's responsible for bringing that team over. He was in the scene with Ari, and that was before I'd ever discussed it with him that was possible. Now he's one of the biggest sports agents in the world now, but it really was a lot of the things on Entourage that I kind of dreamed up that I never thought would happen. It's weird how much time has passed, and now they're already in the new stadium already. It's just crazy.
Yeah, the new stadium's insane. It's unbelievable. Yeah. It's been amazing getting you on here, Doug. Like, just to hear these stories and all from the life in Hollywood and like your upbringing as well. It's just been surreal for us to listen to. So really appreciate you coming on, and make sure everyone listening to this, check out the Victory the podcast. Unbelievable podcast, and for big Entourage fans, you'll love it also.
I know, Doug. I could sit and chat the all day, but I can see Thierry Henry knocking on your window in the background. I think he's looking to get back to work.
Or I'm about to get whacked. So,
Doug, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, guys. Much appreciated. Stay safe.
Absolute legend, Doug.
Yep, be good.
Brilliant, Doug. Thank you very much.
Yep, you got it. See you guys.
Speak soon, mate.
Well, guys, that's it from us this week with Doug Ellin. So it was a really big coup for us getting Doug on. Really, really interesting insight into his life. Obviously, come from New York and living in LA. So we're back next week with another big guest. We'll see you all then, and thanks for listening.